Practical Exam 2, number 3. Use the following adjusted trial balance to journalize all the necessary closing entries in the space below. Okay, so remember when you do closing entries, you only close out temporary accounts, okay? Dividends down through your expenses, so dividends, revenue, and your expenses, these are your temporary accounts that you need to close out. These accounts up here are permanent, okay, and you don't close them. So you might just scratch a line through them. All right, then while you don't have to do the first two entries in the same order, generally we close revenue first and we close it to income summary. Okay, so revenue has a credit balance, so to zero it out, you have to debit it. So you're going to debit service revenue, and you're going to credit income summary. All right, then you're going to close the expenses. Close expenses to income summary. I'm going to have to write smaller. All right, so expenses have a debit balance, so you're going to have to credit them, which means you're going to debit the income summary. So I'm going to debit income summary, but I'm going to hold off on the amount. And then I have to credit each of these expenses. You have to list them all individually. So rent expense, utility, interest, office supplies, and miscellaneous. All right, so these are all credits, so make sure you come across. They have a debit balance, so you have to credit to zero them out. Okay, so then you add them up. I feel like I just added these same numbers up. So 2140. I think these are like the numbers off the lab. So my total is 2140 there. Okay. So now at this point, if I look at a T account for the income summary, all right, if I look at a T account, I've got a credit over here for $38.75 and I have a debit for $21.40. The balance in the income summary needs to go to retained earnings. So I have to find the balance. So $38.75 minus $21.40. $17.35 is my balance. Okay, so now I need to zero out the income summary, and I need to transfer this to net income. To retained earnings. This is our net income, and it needs to get up into the retained earnings account. Okay, so my third entry is to close income summary to retained earnings. All right, so my income summary has a credit balance, so I'm going to debit income summary for the $17.35, and I'm going to credit retained earnings, which makes sense because we had net income. Net income increases retained earnings is increased with the credit. All right, and then the final one is to close dividends to retained earnings. All right, so up here we have this dividend account. It has a $500 debit balance, so I have to credit dividends, and I'm going to transfer it over to retained earnings. I'm going to debit retained earnings. Dividends decrease retained earnings, so that's why we're having to debit retained earnings. And that is it for the closing entries.